And we are back. Welcome to my preview and predictions for Premier League Game Week 15. It's absolutely ridiculous that Game Week 14 is still not even finished less than 12 hours ago. But here we go again. It is time for Game Week 15 in the Premier League. Our second video of the day. We've already posted our thoughts for our previews and predictions for Game Week 15 in La Liga. You can check that out, available at the top of your screen right now. I'm going to mention this to you right now as well. At the end of this video, I'm going to have what all you guys have been saying on the community page regarding the FA Cup second round. I don't cover the second round on this channel. I start doing videos from the third round of the FA Cup onwards once the Premier League teams start coming in. But you guys have been voting, as you always do, on every fixture we do on this channel. And you guys have determined who you think are going to be progressing in the FA Cup second round. So if you look at the bottom of your screen right now, if you scroll through the chapters, you'll see at the end of this video is where I've put the FA Cup predictions that you guys think are the sides that are going to be progressing from the second round of the FA Cup. And as always, if you haven't done so already, please do consider dropping a like on this video if you enjoy all of my previews and predictions. Share it with a friend to get as many people involved as possible. Subscribe to the channel if you're new around here with notifications turned on. We've got a whole host of stuff coming up for you over the next few weeks, including the return of Champions League, Europa League and Europa Conference League for you next week. And then from 2 weeks' time onwards, we're going to be posting every single day for the African Cup of Nations as well, on top of still doing our Premier League, La Liga and European games as well. It's going to be a crazy period over the next few weeks, and we're going to try and do as much for you as possible. So make sure you are subscribed with notifications turned on. And if that's still not enough for you, if you want to gain access to even more previews and predictions from myself, you can click the join button at the bottom of your screen right now to become a member of the channel, just like these wonderful people have done over the course of this week. These guys and you guys could gain access to all of my thoughts on the Ligue 1, Bundesliga and Serie A over on the community page for members only. So please make sure you are clicking that join button if you want to gain my thoughts on all 5 top European leagues. As for today, though, it's time to return to the Premier League once again. And before we start, once again, this is another horrendous week of predictions when it comes to the Premier League. Again, you look at the fixtures on your screen right now. There is very little between a lot of these teams right now. A lot of favourites are going to be away from home this week. It's just one of those weeks where it's just like basically every single game could go all 3 ways. So as always, I'm going to do my best, but that is my pre-warning at the start of this video that this is a very, very tough week to call in the Premier League. But without any further ado, let's get straight into it. We start off with the Saturday lunchtime game, which is by far the biggest match this weekend, and between the 2 most informed sides in the division right now. We've got third place Aston Villa hosting top of the league Arsenal. And we really have to say, what an unbelievable season it has now been for Aston Villa. They failed to win any of their first 5 matches this season, and since then have only lost once, losing at Anfield, and have basically won the rest of their matches. It was an incredible comeback for them in midweek, coming from 2 goals down to beat Brighton 4-3. It now means they have won their last 6 matches in a row, and they're going to be feeling very confident going into this game against Arsenal, who, let's not forget, are themselves 18 games unbeaten in all competitions and are currently top of the Premier League and top of the Champions League. As I said at the start, this is without doubt the 2 most informed sides in the division as things stand. In terms of the team news coming into this, that is big question marks over the former Arsenal goalkeeper, Emi Martinez. He pulled out of Villa's game against Brighton in the warm-up, and as things stand, could miss this game. We'll have to wait for that press conference this afternoon to see if he is going to make it. For Arsenal, another centre-back injury as Mosquera had to go off in their victory over Brentford in midweek, but Saliba could return for this match, as could Leandro Trossard. It should absolutely be noted that over the last couple of seasons, Aston Villa have produced some very big results against Arsenal that have been very derailing to Arsenal's title challenges over the last couple of seasons. However, it should also be noted that those results have been coming at the Emirates and not actually here at Villa Park. Last season, Arsenal did win here 2-0. Honestly, with the injury concerns for Arsenal and with the form that Villa are in, this is a very, very good opportunity for Villa to not only dent Arsenal's title chances once again, but if anything, bolster their own title chances. They're up to 3rd now. They're 6 points behind Arsenal. They get the victory here. The gap's down to 3. Real good opportunity for Villa, but I still think that all 3 results are possible. And as you know, When I don't think there's a clear favourite, I always go for the draw, and that is what I'm going to go for here. I think there's going to be goals in this one. I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. If I had to pick a favourite, I'd still just go for Arsenal. I think this is going to be a very, very entertaining game. On to the 3 o'clock kickoffs then, and we start off with Bournemouth, who are basically the reverse of Aston Villa. They lost only one of their first 8 games in the league. That was their opening game against Liverpool. I believe they got all the way up to second at one point. They have now lost 4 of their last 5, drawing the 5th. So very, very bad run for Bournemouth, and that has seen them drop all the way down to 14th now in the league table after defeat again in midweek at home to Everton. They didn't even score in that game. They now face a Chelsea side who essentially threw away all the hard work that they did in that draw against Arsenal last weekend with 10 men. They then went to Leeds and got absolutely battered. The scoreline was 3-1. It honestly could have been 4 or 5. Leeds were outstanding. More on them later. But Chelsea, very, very poor away to Leeds. And now going to a ground that isn't easy to win on, although other sides would disagree in recent weeks, Chelsea do need to bounce back here. Otherwise, their title chances are going to start slipping away. Certainly, though, Chelsea are still the more informed side as things stand. That loss to Leeds did end a good unbeaten run for them. In terms of the team news, Lewis Cook remains suspended for Bournemouth following his red card last weekend, as does Caicedo for Chelsea for the same situation, red card against Arsenal. In terms of the injury front, though, no fresh injury concerns for either side, but both teams could rotate after changing things in midweek. In terms of the head-to-head record, Chelsea do have a very good record against Bournemouth. They haven't lost on Bournemouth's ground since 2019, and they have won 3 of the last 5 games on this ground, including a victory here last season. Chelsea also have the 3rd best away record in the division so far this season. They were the best away record in the league so far this season, but as we've already mentioned a couple of times, they lost to Leeds in midweek. I'm still going to go for the Chelsea victory here. Bournemouth need to sort something out drastically if they're going to turn their poor run around. So right now, I think Chelsea are going to win it, and I'm going to go for 2-1 to them. Now to Everton, who, as we just mentioned, bounced back from their loss to Newcastle with that 1-0 win over Bournemouth in midweek. Now back at home, they face the Nottingham Forest side, who themselves bounced back from a home defeat. They lost to Brighton last weekend, but then picked up an away win at bottom club Wolves, which has moved them further away from the relegation zone. A very important victory for Sean Dyche's side. In fact, both sides actually come into this with their respective losses last weekend being their only defeat in their last 5. So I'm expecting this one to be really close once again. 2 sides that are actually playing some good football at the moment. In terms of the team news, Idrissa Gana Gueye is still suspended following that slap on Michael Keane. Michael Keane himself is injured for this match, not because of the slap. He's picked up a muscular injury. For Nottingham Forest, Murillo, their centre-back, is a big doubt, having missed the victory over Wolves in midweek. Last season, both matches were won by the side playing away from home, which means that Nottingham Forest actually came to Goodison Park in the final game that Everton played Forest at Goodison, and Forest got the victory. In that game, Sean Dyche was the Everton manager. Now, as the Forest manager, he's now got to try and repeat the trick, going to the Hill Dickinson and getting the result here. To be honest, the biggest thing I would expect from this match is that it's going to be a low-scoring affair. Both of these sides have been way more defensively solid in recent weeks, and I honestly would not be ruling out the 0-0 draw here. But from what I've seen of these two sides over the last few weeks, I think Everton are just going to edge it out. So I'm going to go for a very, very narrow 1-0 win to Everton. But honestly, again, all 3 results I do think are possible, but I do think Everton are the favourites for this match. Now to a game that, if we're being honest, really shouldn't be a 3 o'clock kickoff considering how well these sides have done so far this season. We have Manchester City taking on Sunderland. For City, absolutely ridiculous their game in midweek against Fulham. 5-4 it ended up in the end. They were 5-1 up at one point. For Sunderland, it was a point away at Anfield, a 1-1 draw for them. And you've got to give them credit. They're still in 6th place. They're still fighting away. And if we're being honest, they probably should have won at Anfield in midweek. They're going to be disappointed. Not only that they didn't put Liverpool to bed when they were 1-0 up, but then that chance in the last minute to get the winner that they did end up fluffing. And if we're also being honest, Manchester City still not at their absolute best yet. You think of, they scraped over the line against Leeds, getting the late winner. They scraped over the line against Fulham. being far enough ahead that they weren't caught. And of course, they lost their previous 2 games before that. So it is a genuine opportunity for Sunderland to go to the Etihad here and get a result. In terms of the team news, no fresh concerns for either side, but yet again, I would expect to see some rotation from both, as the sides did actually rotate for their respective matches in midweek. I think the most obvious change we're going to see from a Sunderland perspective is Isidore coming back up front for Brobby, but we shall see. Brobby has been playing well off the bench recently and did well against Liverpool in midweek. Naturally, these 2 sides haven't actually met since 2017, so we can't really read much into the head-to-head record, but it should be mentioned that Manchester City have won their last 7 matches in all competitions against Sunderland. I do expect that run to continue here, and I also expect there to be a lot of goals in this match, but ultimately I am going to go for that Manchester City win. It seems daft to suggest that even though Sunderland have done so well since being promoted, that a side like City is going to lose to a promoted team. I'm going for a 3-2 win to Manchester City. Next up is the only game that I'm actually confident of the result in. And we've got Newcastle taking on Burnley. For Newcastle, they did, of course, fumble a win against Spurs in midweek, thanks to that bizarre overhead kick from Romero, which actually bounced twice before making its way into the back of the net in stoppage time, getting Spurs the draw against Newcastle. But Newcastle will be very disappointed in that result. Regardless, though, they're still 7 games unbeaten at St James's Park as things stand. For Burnley, they have lost their last 5 matches in a row and in serious, serious trouble of falling away from the sides that are moving away from the relegation zone. You think Forest won, Leeds won, West Ham drew. Burnley, 5 defeats in a row. It's not the sort of run you want going into a very, very busy Christmas period. In terms of the team news, again, no fresh concerns for either side coming into this. But for Newcastle, I think we'll yet again see some rotation in that midfield. I think Bruno Guimaraes comes back into the starting lineup. Nick Pope could also return in goal. For Scott Parker, again, I think just changes are needed. Either in the personnel on the team, the formation, something's got to change if they're going to sort themselves out. It's just not going very well for Burnley right now. What I would say is Martin Dubravka faces his former club in goal. Newcastle have won the last 6 meetings between these 2 sides, home and away. And to be honest, I see no reason why that run will not continue again here. I'm going for a 2-0 win to Newcastle. That then takes us on to Tottenham and Brentford. And as we've just mentioned for Spurs, it was another draw for them away from home against Newcastle last time out. That now means that because Chelsea lost to Leeds, Tottenham now have the best away record in the Premier League so far this season. The problem is they're the 19th best team at home, which is absolutely ridiculous. Only Wolves have a worse home record than Spurs so far this season. But the good news for them is that Brentford are the 17th best team away with just 1 win and 6 losses on the road so far for the Bees. So opportunity for Spurs to end that really poor run of form at home. What you would say is that even though they did draw with Newcastle, Spurs were very poor in that match and realistically should have ended up losing the game. As a result, it actually makes them winless in their last 5. So really, really poor run for Spurs coming into this. And if we're going to talk about Brentford, even though they ended up losing to Arsenal in midweek, I actually thought they played very, very well and were unlucky not to get something from that match. And then when you consider that Igor Thiago didn't play in that match, I know he came on late on, but he didn't start the match. He's going to be fresh coming into this match on really, really good form. You've got to say Brentford have got a very good chance of getting something from this match. In terms of the team news, I would also expect a couple of changes from a Spurs perspective. Mickey van der Ven didn't feature in the draw against Newcastle. He is expected to return for this game, and obviously no fresh concerns for either side overall. In terms of the head-to-head record, Spurs have won the last 3 meetings between these 2 sides, but that was when Thomas Frank was the Brentford manager. Now, as the Spurs manager, he's going to have to face the side that he made into an established Premier League team. And to be honest, from what I've seen from Spurs over the last few weeks, I'm not convinced he's going to get a result against Keith Andrews' side here. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw for Spurs and Brentford. Spurs absolutely should be considered the favourites, but you just can't trust them at home right now. So I'm going for that 1-1 draw. On to the late kickoff on Saturday then, and it is Leeds taking on Liverpool. And, well, you've got to talk about sides that are out of form. Technically, these are 2 sides that are out of form because even though Leeds did beat Chelsea in midweek, that ended a run of 4 straight defeats in the league for them. They now face a Liverpool side who, let's be honest, were very lucky to get a point against Sunderland in midweek At home, struggling again, but you would say is they did win away to West Ham in their last away game, so maybe with the pressures away from Anfield, they are going to start doing a little bit better. But you look at that Leeds performance against Manchester City, where they were unlucky to lose 3-2. Then you look at how well they played at home at Ellen Road against Chelsea. You'd probably have to say that Leeds come into this as the ever so slight favourites for this match, purely in terms of that momentum. In terms of the team news here, the big question once again is, will Mohamed Salah start for Liverpool? 2 consecutive games on the bench for him. He's going off to AFCON in a couple of weeks as well, so maybe Liverpool have just washed their hands of him and said, you are out of the team until AFCON is resolved. We shall see. From a Leeds perspective, no fresh concerns for them, who could make a couple of changes to their side, having played on Wednesday night. As I said, I actually think Leeds are going to be the team that get the result here. And I'm just going to put the prediction on the screen now. I'm going to go for 2-1 to Leeds. But I will always say, even though Liverpool have been playing so badly over recent weeks, they're still 9th in the Premier League as things stand. They're still the defending champions. They still, on paper, have a way, way better team than Leeds. And Liverpool should absolutely be winning this match, as they did 2 seasons ago, where they beat Leeds 6-1 on this ground. So, I still think Liverpool are the favourites. But I can't trust them right now. I just said it for the Spurs game. I cannot trust Liverpool right now. I think Leeds can beat them, especially if they played the way they did in midweek. And I'm going to go for the Leeds victory. As always, we shall see. On to Sunday then, and one side that you thought you could trust was Brighton. They're going to be taking on West Ham. For Brighton, they threw away a 2-goal lead against Aston Villa, ending up losing 4-3 in what, to be fair, was a very, very good game in the race for Europe. For West Ham, it was that draw against Manchester United last night, which I'm still absolutely fuming about. More than that when we get to the final fixture of today's video. But after that result, West Ham are going to be feeling a little bit good about themselves and are probably feeling like they can go to Brighton and get a result here as well. For Brighton, that defeat to Aston Villa ended a run of 6 games unbeaten, whereas for West Ham, with that draw against Manchester United, they are now 3 games without a win, obviously losing to Liverpool last week as well. In terms of the team news, Shimaz is out for Brighton after only lasting 20 minutes against Aston Villa in midweek. However, Danny Welbeck didn't start that game and is expected to return to the starting lineup for this match. For West Ham, no fresh concerns coming out of last night's game, and Lucas Paqueta is back from suspension. Last season, it was a 3-2 victory here for Brighton, and it was also a 1-1 draw at the London Stadium. I do actually think that this one is going to end up being a relatively close affair, but right now, I would expect Brighton to go back to winning ways with a victory here, and I'm going for 2-1 to Brighton. And then it's time for the main event, which is Fulham against Palace. Now, I don't want to be disrespectful, but when you've got games like Man City Sunderland and Aston Villa Arsenal, and even Bournemouth Chelsea, you'd probably say that's a more likely main event game than Fulham against Crystal Palace. But here we are. That is the late kickoff on Sunday, and I do mean that with the greatest respect to both sides, because certainly Fulham, who had that incredible game against Manchester City in midweek, that 5-4 game, if this game ends up being another 5-4, I'll hold my hands up and say great choice for putting that game on last. But anyway, here we go. As we just mentioned, Fulham did end up losing 5-4 to Manchester City in midweek, but I don't think that should take away from what has been a very good performance from Fulham over the last few weeks. 2 wins going into the Manchester City game and still scoring 4 in that match, despite losing, does put them in good stead coming into this. For Palace, not a great couple of weeks for them. Losing to Strasbourg, losing to Manchester United, and then only beating Burnley 1-0 in what their own players described as a very poor performance for them in midweek. So maybe a little bit of fatigue starting to build up for Crystal Palace. As we always say, Glasner tends to play his strongest 11 in every single match. Now playing every game at the weekend, every game in midweek, in cups, in Europe, in the Premier League. Maybe it is starting to get to these Palace players. We shall see. In terms of the team news, no fresh concerns for either side once again from those midweek fixtures. Although from a Crystal Palace perspective, Ismaila Sarr is still out. From a Fulham perspective, surely informed Chukwueze gets a start after his performance off the bench against Manchester City. Last season, both of these fixtures were won by the away side. 2-0 Crystal Palace won here last season. 2-0 Fulham won at Palace last season. The previous 3 meetings between these two sides ended in draws. As always, the Premier League is absolutely impossible to predict. I'm just going to go for a 1-1 draw for Fulham and Crystal Palace. Again, I hope it's 3-3, but right now I think it's going to be more likely to be a low-scoring affair. And then finally, we have the Monday Night Football, which is Wolves against Manchester United. You've heard of the story of the unstoppable force meeting the immovable object. Well, let me introduce you to the stoppable force in Wolves, who haven't scored a single goal in their last 5 matches, meeting the movable object in Manchester United, who have conceded in their last 7 games in a row. Something's got to give here, you would have to imagine. For Wolves, though, it is now 8 defeats in a row. They're still on 2 points. They haven't won a single game in the Premier League this season. And for Manchester United, they have still only had 1 defeat in their last 8 games, but it was another really disappointing performance and an even more disappointing result, drawing 1-1 at home to West Ham last night. If you want to see my reaction to that, link to that will also be available at the top of your screen. In terms of the team news, no fresh concerns for the home side, but I said it before the game in midweek. Rob Edwards has got to sort something out with Wolves. They keep sort of sticking with the same structure and the same setup that they had under the previous manager, and it's still not working for them. For Manchester United, they will hope to have Matthias de Ligt back. He missed the game against West Ham last night, and I think was a big miss in the end from a Manchester United perspective. They'll hope to have him back. And of course, we'll have Matheus Cunha returning to Molineux for the first time since he left in the summer. In terms of the head-to-head record, it's actually pretty favourable in terms of the home side. Wolves won both home and away to Manchester United last season. That, of course, is 2 more victories than they have secured in the entirety of this season so far. And they did both of those victories over Manchester United without conceding last season. Based on the last couple of weeks, though, I would still expect Manchester United to get the victory here. If we are the side that ends Wolves' losing streak, it's going to be an even more damaging result for Ruben Amorim. But we shall see. I'm putting Man United hat on for this one, and I'm going for 1-0 to Manchester United. I'm hoping we can get that clean sheet, considering how poor Wolves have been in front of goal. But as always, that is going to be it for today's video, and let me know all of your thoughts down in the comment section below, ahead of what I think is going to be a very, very difficult and intriguing weekend of Premier League action. Before I leave you, let's see what you guys have been saying over on the community page regarding these fixtures, and you have gone for the following. The majority have gone for Arsenal to beat Aston Villa. I'm not surprised about that. The majority have gone for Chelsea to beat Bournemouth. Majority have gone for Everton to beat Forest. It's actually pretty close between Man City and Sunderland, but the majority have still gone for Manchester City. Basically, everyone thinks that Newcastle are going to beat Burnley. The majority think that Spurs are going to beat Brentford. Very, very close between Leeds and Liverpool, but the majority have agreed with me that Leeds are going to beat Liverpool at Ellen Road. Basically, everyone thinks Brighton are going to beat West Ham. Very close again between Fulham and Crystal Palace, with the majority going for the draw in that one. And then finally, the majority have gone for Manchester United to beat Wolves. Finally then, as I mentioned at the start of the video, rather than jumping back to my predictions for these Premier League games, I'm going to leave you with what you guys have been saying regarding the FA Cup second round this weekend, which does, of course, start tonight. And you have gone for the following. I'm just putting the teams on the screen right now. I don't know how useful this will be to you in terms of determining your own thoughts regarding these fixtures. But over on the community page, you guys have been voting, and these are the 20 teams that you guys think are going to be progressing from the FA Cup this weekend. As always, thank you very much for watching. We'll be doing all sorts of videos over the course of the next few weeks, as I've already mentioned. Champions League, Europa League, and Europa Conference League coming up for you over the course of the next week. Community polls for those matches will start to be posted over the course of the next 24 hours. So make sure you head over to that community page to have your say on all of those matches. As always, link to that will be available in the description and in the pinned comment of this video. A final thank you very much for watching once again. I'll see you very soon.